October 30th, 1935. Right field, Dayton, Ohio. A cold wind sweeps across the concrete runway as the sun climbs above the hangars, glinting off the silver fuselage of a revolutionary new bomber, the Boeing Model 299. For engines idle in unison, coughing plumes of blue-gray exhaust into the morning air. Reporters, generals, and engineers stand clustered near the control tower, their hats pulled low against the chill. This was supposed to be the dawn of a new era in American air power. At the controls sits Major Ployer P. Hill, the Army Air Corps' chief test pilot. Beside him, Boeing's own test pilot Leslie Tower reviews the instruments one last time. Behind them, the flight engineer gives a thumbs up. The Model 299 is immense, sleek, powerful, capable of carrying a bomb load greater than anything before it. Newspapers have already called it the Flying Fortress. Hill pushes the throttles forward. The four Pratt & Whitney R-1690 Hornet engines roar to life. The bomber rumbles down the runway, gathering speed, its wings trembling under the strain. Spectators shield their eyes as the giant lifts gracefully into the sky. For a moment, it's perfect, the kind of flight that promises the future. Then, barely after takeoff, something goes wrong. The nose pitches upward too sharply. The aircraft stalls. Witnesses gasp as the bomber lurches, banks hard, and plummets toward the ground. Seconds later, a deafening crash tears through right field. Flames rise from the wreckage, curling around twisted metal. Major Hill and Tower are pulled from the inferno, both badly burned. Hill dies shortly after. The cause? Investigators discover something shockingly simple. Hill had forgotten to release the control lock, a small mechanical latch that fixed the elevator and rudder in place while parked on the ground. The superb bomber hadn't failed because of design. It had failed because of human error. Within hours, the excitement turns to silence. Boeing's future, and the very concept of the long-range bomber, hangs by a thread. The Army Air Corps convenes an emergency review board. The mood is grim. The Model 299, they conclude, is too complicated for a human pilot to fly. Rival designs from Douglas and Martin are simpler, safer, cheaper. Plans to order dozens of flying fortresses are halted. Boeing's dream of dominating the skies seems over. In Seattle, the Boeing engineers stare at the telegram announcing the decision. Years of work, millions of dollars, gone in seconds. The crash has turned promise into humiliation. But one man refuses to give up. His name is Eddie Allen, a quiet, bespectacled engineer and test pilot known for his meticulous methods. He wasn't at right field that day, but he studies the accident report over and over, replaying the chain of events in his mind. It wasn't incompetence, he realizes. It was information overload. The Model 299 had so many new systems, so many levers and switches, that even an ace like Hill could miss a step. Allen scribbles a note in the margin. We don't need better pilots. We need better procedures. He calls it an engineer's shortcut, not a redesign, not a new invention, just a different way to think. He takes out a clipboard and starts drafting a list. Each line corresponds to a critical step before takeoff. Remove the control lock, set trim tabs, check fuel valves, magnetos, cowl flaps, hydraulics, controls. Nothing fancy, just a clear, systematic checklist. A pilot could run through it in under 2 minutes. It's so simple, some colleagues laugh at the idea. But Allen insists. Airplanes are becoming too complex for memory alone. If one mistake can destroy a $200,000 bomber, then a piece of paper could save it. Weeks later, Boeing arranges a new demonstration flight for the Air Corps. Same model, same field, different approach. This time, the pilots, Major Stanley Umstead and Lieutenant Robert K. Giovanoli, sit in the cockpit, holding Allen's typed checklist. They read aloud together. Flaps set. Tailwheel lock, released. Controls, free. Engines roar. The aircraft accelerates. This time, it rises smooth and steady into the blue. No stall, no hesitation. A perfect climb. Allen watches from the ground, his face expressionless except for a faint nod. The checklist had worked. The board at right field takes notice. The Boeing engineers fly more test missions. They keep using the checklist, and nothing goes wrong again. By the end of 1936, the Army reverses its decision. They authorize a small purchase, 13 new B-17s for evaluation. It's not much, but it's enough. Enough to keep Boeing alive. Enough to prove that discipline, not genius, keeps machines flying. In the years that follow, those 13 bombers become the seed of something far greater, a fleet that would soon fill the skies over Europe. And Eddie Allen's checklist? It would become standard procedure across all aviation, civilian, military, and beyond. The Flying Fortress had been saved not by metal or money, but by a piece of paper. Boeing Field, Seattle. Rain taps against the corrugated hangar roof as Eddie Allen walks between rows of half-built B-17s. The place smells of oil and metal polish, the perfume of persistence. The Flying Fortress is alive again, but barely. Each new aircraft feels like a gamble, a fragile hope in aluminum form. Allen, now Boeing's chief test pilot, spends his days reworking every procedure that had once relied on instinct. He's no longer just an engineer. He's building a doctrine. Each lever, each dial on the control panel must have a ritual, a habit ingrained into muscle memory. Inside the cockpit of a freshly painted B-17, Allen slides into the left seat, clipboard in hand. The checklist sits clipped to the yoke, its edges worn from constant handling. Mixture rich. Cowl flaps, open. Fuel selectors, main tanks. He doesn't fly until every line is spoken aloud and confirmed. The co-pilot echoes each call, their voices calm, mechanical, deliberate. There's no room for improvisation. Boeing's new test pilots follow his example. Soon, the Air Corps officers who visit Seattle for evaluation flights are copying it, too. The Army manual writers take notes. The idea, Allen's quiet revolution, spreads. By 1938, the B-17's reputation has changed from too complicated to the safest heavy bomber in the world. Its stability, range, and precision astonish foreign observers. The press stops talking about the 1935 crash and starts calling it the four-engine miracle. Still, some in the Army remain skeptical. Colonel Frank Lackland warns in a memo, "Discipline on paper is not discipline in the air." But the numbers speak louder than skepticism. Not a single major incident has occurred since the checklist became standard. As the clouds of war gather over Europe, the Army Air Corps begins expanding its bomber fleet. Boeing receives an order for dozens more B-17s, an order that will save the company from bankruptcy and define the next decade of American airpower. Yet Allen doesn't celebrate. He's restless, chasing perfection. During one test flight over Puget Sound, he turns to his co-pilot and mutters, "The checklist keeps us alive, but only if men respect it." One lapse, just one, and the fortress falls again. He has no idea how prophetic those words will be. August 17, 1942. Over Rouen, France. The engines of 12 B-17s thunder through thin air at 24,000 feet. Frost coats the gun barrels. Inside the lead ship, Major Paul Tibbets glances down at the clipboard strapped beside the throttle quadrant. His gloved hand traces the checklist, the same one written years ago by Eddie Allen. Bomb bay doors, open. Autopilot, engaged. Ready to release. This is the first American daylight bombing raid over occupied Europe. Every gunner, every pilot, every mechanic who worked on these planes owes their safety to that small ritual of order, the checklist. Bombs fall. The B-17s turn homeward under heavy flak, engines coughing black smoke. Some are hit, but most return. The mission is a success. Across the Atlantic, in Seattle, Eddie Allen reads the report and allows himself a rare smile. His system, born from tragedy, now carries men safely through war. But the skies are unforgiving. As production ramps up, the Flying Fortress grows heavier, faster, deadlier. Each new model adds layers of complexity: turbo superchargers, electrical systems, oxygen valves. And every new feature means another checklist, another safeguard against the chaos of flight. By 1943, the B-17 has become legend. Crews trust it like a living thing. She'll bring you home, they say, if you do things right, if you follow the list. Yet war is never kind to its makers. On February 18, 1943, Eddie Allen takes off in a YB-29, a prototype of Boeing's next bomber, to test engine performance. At 20,000 feet, a fire erupts in the right wing. He could bail out. He doesn't. Instead, he fights to steer the burning aircraft away from the city below. The bomber crashes short of the field. Allen and his crew die instantly. The man who saved the B-17 dies trying to save Seattle. In the aftermath, his colleagues at Boeing create something in his honor, a formalized, standardized system for every step of flight, from taxi to landing. Not a piece of paper anymore, but a doctrine etched into aviation forever. May 1945. Over Europe, the war is ending. Thousands of B-17s, nearly 13,000 built since that fateful day in 1935, return to their bases. Pilots climb down from the cockpits, faces gray with exhaustion and relief. On every control yoke, the same thing is clipped, a worn, oil-stained checklist. In London, General Ira Eaker speaks at a press conference. The Flying Fortress didn't just win battles, it taught us discipline. It taught us how to fly. From the ashes of one crash came the birth of aviation procedure, a quiet evolution that reached beyond war. Every airliner that takes off today, every spacecraft that leaves Earth, carries Eddie Allen's ghost in its cockpit. Boeing engineers later say that without him, the B-17 would have died on that runway in 1935. Instead, it became the symbol of American endurance. The final entry in Allen's original notebook, preserved in the Boeing archives, reads simply, "Procedure over pride. Always." A line that would outlive both him and the fortress he saved.